Okay, well, it's 6:58. We'll just wait another second. And Joe, do you want to come up here and say something? I'm going to turn it over to Joe, our chair. And now it's raining really hard out there.
Yeah.
Thank you, Siobhan. I'll add my welcome. We're giving up on this.
You have to, it keeps turning off and on.
Oh, it's probably low batteries.
No, it's on.
Hello. Does that help or hurt? I don't know. My name is Joe
Hi.
Brancoli, and I'll add my welcome to that of Siobhan's. This one must have a low battery. Green light. Now we got a microphone that works, I think. My name is Joe Brancoli, chair of the Falls of the James Group. I welcome you all tonight to our January meeting, which is, of course, featuring some interesting weather. And hello, Steve. I don't know if I think we welcomed everybody by name, but Steve and Denise, welcome. We are very, very glad to have tonight as our speaker, Danny Plaugher. Danny is the executive director of Virginians for High-Speed Rail and the Virginia Transit Association. He joined Virginians for High-Speed Rail in 2007, where he helped to create the Virginia Intercity Passenger Rail Operating and Capital Fund. I'm not going to try that acronym. And sorry, I also forgot my glasses tonight. And he makes Virginia one of the first states with a dedicated funding source for passenger rail. That is, of course, huge. He joined the Virginia Transit Association in 2019 to help their policy and outreach efforts. Danny also serves on numerous community and regional boards, including the Mega Region Institutional Council for RVA 717 Connects and the Capital Region Rail Vision Advisory Committee for the Greater Washington Partnership. What this all means is that we are going to hear some very interesting news tonight about what our Commonwealth is doing and can do to enhance its rail efforts. And with no further ado, let's have a warm Sierra Club welcome for Danny Plaugher.
Thank you all, and thank you, Joe, and everybody for allowing me to speak today. And I'm going to share my screen, and before I do, I'm going to apologize. I am a data nerd, and so this is going to be a little bit data heavy on making the case of really why Virginia is investing billions of dollars into our rail program, what it means, and then also I'll get into what's going on today and what's kind of coming down the tracks, to use a train pun a little bit. So you should be able to see the presentation. Sorry, I'm working with two screens. So a little bit about Virginians for High-Speed Rail. We are a nonprofit coalition, citizens, businesses, localities, community groups that educate and advocate for the expansion of fast, frequent, reliable intercity passenger rail service. And we were founded in 1994. So our organization is actually celebrating our 30th anniversary this year. And we were founded in 94 as a partnership between really the Chambers of Commerce of Richmond and Hampton Roads. And then we became an independent group in 2000 and have been operating as such ever since. And so the basis is that Virginia is changing and our transportation challenges are increasing. And so when you start looking at the travel trends here in the Commonwealth over the last 30 years, our population has grown about 40%, with 81% of those new citizens residing in the urban crescent. That's the sliver of land that essentially follows Northern Virginia down 95 to Richmond, and then down 64 over to Hampton Roads. At the same time, our road network has only grown about 14%, while VMTs, that's vehicle miles traveled, that's the official measurement of how many folks are actually using the roads, or the measurement of how much traffic there is, has grown 38% to match our population growth. However, when you start looking at our interstates, They've grown 13%, while our VMTs have grown 73%. And then our flights, and I apologize, my two screens are in front of each other. Our flights have declined 34%, while passengers per flight has nearly doubled. I'm going to turn my monitor off, or turn my camera off real quick, just to make it a little bit easier. There we go. And so what this all kind of looks like is this is a measurement of VMTs per interstate lane mile in the Commonwealth of Virginia, essentially kind of growing from the 1970s as the interstate system became to fruition in the 90s, and then the continued upward trends. Regrettably, VMTs continue to grow in 2022, some preliminary numbers. And so this kind of encompasses what our transportation system looks like today. And that is an actual photo of I-95 up at the top left. I believe that is National Airport on the top right. The bottom right is the Hammond Roads Bridge Tunnel. And the bottom left is a graphic I borrowed off of Google. Please do not call child services. Those are not my children. And the baggage claim. And so when you look at the population growth and the projections over the coming years, by 2040, it is anticipated that Virginia will have about another 1.1 million Virginians, with another 1 million projected to move into that urban crescent that I mentioned. This is 7 million Virginians living on less than a third of the Commonwealth's landmass. And so we will have more residents in the urban crescent in 2040 than lived in the entire Commonwealth in 2000. And so we are becoming highly concentrated along our urban crescent and in our urban corridors. And one of the frequent things that I get asked when I give this presentation, I imagine not by the Sierra Club, but by other groups, is, well, we don't need trains. We can just kind of pave our way. Why don't we just build more roads? Is the frequent thing that I hear. And so we actually did an analysis of what it would cost to pave our way back to 2000. We would need to add about 1,000 lane miles of interstate roadway here in the Commonwealth of Virginia to get back to 2000 levels of traffic. And that estimated cost would somewhere be around the range of $61 billion. Now, to put that in context, if you took every single dollar or penny that has ever been raised by the gas tax here in Virginia, going all the way back to 1923, when the Commonwealth first instituted the gas tax, that would actually be more than we've raised in the state gas tax over the last 100 years. And so it would be an extremely expensive and one that we would never get out of, especially with induced demand probably filling those lanes up before they even get built. There's also the environmental impact of roads and kind of putting all of our eggs in one basket. According to the EPA, the greenhouse gas emissions, 46% of our greenhouse gas emissions in the Commonwealth come from the transportation sector. When you drill down a little bit more, 58% of the transportation sector's greenhouse gas emissions comes from passenger vehicles. So that is the equivalent of about 27% of all our greenhouse gas emissions coming from passenger vehicles, primarily vehicles operated and by one person going to different destinations. It's not very efficient. It's very, very environmentally harmful to our communities, to our environment, and to our citizens. Another reason is millennials and Gen Z. Young Virginians, thankfully, prefer their phones to automobiles. When you start comparing the number of driving eligible Virginians between the ages of 16 and 34, nearly 26% of them do not have a driver's license. And the ones that do drive way less than their other demographic counterparts. If the younger Virginians between the ages of 16 and 34 started driving at the same rate as Virginia's baby boomers, traffic in the Commonwealth would increase somewhere around 10 to 11% overnight. And this trend is actually one that is growing much quicker than several others. I ran the same analysis looking back at 2000 and 2010. And in 2000, the number of 16 to 34-year-olds that did not have a driver's license was right around 18%. And so we've gone from 18% of that demographic not having a driver's license to well over 26%, and it's starting to speed up even more as technology advances and young Virginians can talk to their friends via phone, video games, etc. The need for an automobile is just not there. And in fact, I have a nephew who purposely failed his driver's ed exam twice. And it wasn't until my brother and sister-in-law essentially start threatening to take away Xboxes and video games so that he could assist in shepherding his younger siblings around, did he finally pass the driver's ed test on purpose. And so it's one of those things where a lot of younger Virginians don't really see the need or desire to drive. And so that kind of brings us to why we started looking and transitioning and thinking about rail as a investment and a component. And these are two quotes from our last two secretaries of transportation, bipartisan Aubrey Lane, a Republican who was secretary from 2014 to 18. When asked what his transportation philosophy was, he stated, "We've got to move more people, not more vehicles." And that was one of the first times that we had heard somebody in the cabinet discuss transportation in the context of people. Previously, it had always been, how do we move more cars? How do we get more cars through different areas? And so to have a secretary who conveyed it in that manner really spoke volumes. And then his successor, Shannon Valentine, they did a full comprehensive analysis on I-95 to figure out how they finally unclogged the system. And what they found out was at expanding I-95 one lane in each direction from essentially the Potomac River down to Fredericksburg would cost the equivalent of $12.5 billion. And that by the time that construction was completed, traffic would actually be worse than it was when they began. And so that's why they launched the Transforming Rail in Virginia initiative, because the only way they can really get the corridor, when you look at the DC to Richmond corridor holistically, not just roads, but roads, rail, and other modes of transportation, start kind of getting it into that yellow is by adding more rail service. And so why trains? Simply put, because we've pretty much tried everything else. And trains are very successful. They connect 7.2 million Virginians are within 20 miles of an Amtrak station. 88% of our higher education students, 11% of our nation's armed forces, and over 3 million jobs are all within 20 miles of a passenger rail station today. And if you start looking back at over the last 30 years since VHSR was created, we've doubled passenger rail service. We're kind of leading the nation in expanding rail service. We've doubled ridership. And in fact, this past year, ending in September, which is the end of Amtrak's fiscal year, we had the highest ridership on Amtrak in the Commonwealth in our history. We had nearly 1.9 million passengers took the train, far eclipsing our previous mark of 1.6 million. And this year so far, through October and November, we are actually on pace for 2.1 million. So we're continuing to both expand service and see Virginians come to the train. 6.8 million Virginians have new or improved service. We've generated over $11 billion in economic benefits across the Commonwealth, reduced greenhouse gas emissions by over 1.5 million metric tons, removed billions of PMTs, passenger miles, from our roadways, and dramatically reduced our fuel consumption. And so this is what Amtrak's ridership looks like over the last really kind of a little bit over a decade, since the Commonwealth started embarking on launching and expanding passenger rail service. And they really started making the investments following the creation of IPROC. That's the acronym for the Intercity Passenger Rail Operating and Capital Fund that we got created in 2013 to help continue the Richmond and Lynchburg regional trains. But every time we expand service, we've seen continued bumps. And in fact, before the pandemic, ridership was trending up. And so now that we're kind of out of the pandemic, we're actually just seeing a continuation of the trends we saw before everything got shut down in March of 2020. And so what's next? Transforming rail in Virginia. It's been in the news a little bit the last couple months, but it is really an expansive program. It's multi-corridor, multi-asset, multi-phase, and multi-decade program that will greatly enhance, improve, and expand Virginia's intercity and commuter rail network. So not only our Amtrak service, but also our Virginia Railway Express service up in Northern Virginia. And so multiple corridors are getting touched and benefited, improved, including the DC down to Richmond, the expansions over to Hampton Roads, and down to Raleigh and Charlotte, the service from Northern Virginia down to Lynchburg, Roanoke, and future expansions out to the New River Valley, as well as you can kind of see that Clifton Forge, Charlottesville, Doswell. That is a huge backbone of what we call the Commonwealth corridor, which is connecting New River Valley, Roanoke, up to Charlottesville, over to Richmond, and then down to Hampton Roads. And so it's returning cross-state service really for the first time in decades. And so multi-asset for the first time since Doug Wilder sold the RF&P in the early 90s. The Commonwealth now owns over 412 miles of railroad right-of-way, over 250 miles of railroad trackage. We're also in the process of expanding and building an estimated 400 to 500 new railroad track sidings, bridges over the coming years and decades. We're investing $32 million to upgrade the stations, improve ADA, improve safety, and make environmental improvements as well. There's about a $50 million in additional needs, and that number may have gone up a little bit of station improvements, and that's one of the big things that is on our state rail authority as well as Amtrak's mind of making our stations really great entrances to our communities. And then thirdly, the launch of state-of-the-art Siemens Aero train sets will be coming to Virginia in 2026, 2027. These are dual-powered, 125-mile-an-hour top speed push-pull technology. And so here's where, if I was in person, I would ask how many of you have taken the train north of DC and sat as they changed engines up in Washington for 45 minutes to an hour. This dual mode, dual powered train set that's coming to the Commonwealth will eliminate that layover in DC. And so we will go from an hour, 45 minutes down to about 10, 15 minutes. So it will be a normal stop versus a huge layover. And so that will cut the trip time from Richmond to New York by nearly an hour. Multi-phase. This is phase one of what Virginia and North Carolina are undertaking today. Washington and Richmond, 9 projects totaling nearly $2 billion, including 23 new miles. That also includes the purchase of all those rail corridors that I mentioned. So that was a large chunk, is to bring these rail corridors into public ownership. One project between Richmond and Raleigh totaling about $39 million, advancing the corridor to 30% design. The Commonwealth corridor not only was submitted for the corridor ID along with the Christiansburg to Bristol, as well as the Richmond and Hampton Roads is kind of still under there, but the Commonwealth corridor and the Christiansburg to Bristol were accepted into the program, the Federal Rail Corridors Identification Program. I'll get into that in a little bit. Phase 2 of the corridor is 7 projects totaling nearly $2.6 billion. This is expanding and essentially doubling capacity over the Potomac River, the Long Bridge that you may all read about. 14 plus new miles of railroad trackage, including quad tracking from the Potomac River all the way down to through Alexandria, and then triple tracking to Lorton. And then there's also about another $500 million, $440 million set aside for 9 projects for extending service from Roanoke to Christiansburg in the New River Valley. In addition to those two phases, there are phases 3, 4, 5, and 6 that are coming afterward. And it's one of those things where the Commonwealth is kind of catching either the hard things like the Long Bridge or the low-hanging fruit as they continue along. And so through the next 4 phases, more projects will start to be added as other projects through phases 1 and 2 come online. But we're looking at complete quad tracking and separation of the Washington to Richmond corridor. So passengers will have their dedicated tracks, freight will have theirs, and improved capacity between Richmond and Hampton Roads, added capacity to launch the cross-state service, the Commonwealth corridor, and then also building out of the Petersburg to Raleigh corridor, connecting all the way through the Southeast. And so this is just a summarization of the phases 1 and 2 and all the projects that are happening. So it's not a north to south, south to north. It's really kind of hopscotching all across the corridor, figuring out where are the conflicts today, where can we add projects that may improve reliability by 1% or take a little bit of time off or allow us to add more trains. And so the goal is not only to build all these corridors, but as we're building and expanding, adding more train service. And so that's the benefits. In 2021 or 2022, there was a new train that was extended from Richmond to Main Street Station, or Staples Mill to Main Street Station, as well as additional service for a third train down to Norfolk. There was another train from DC extended all the way down to Roanoke. More train service comes online in 2026, including another train out to Newport News and another Richmond train. And then in 2029, 2030, we'll add 3 more trains, including potentially express trains out of Richmond. So we could see Amtrak regional trains that go Richmond, Fredericksburg, maybe Alexandria, and to DC, and start getting trips that are in the hour 145 type time frame because they are express out of Richmond. There's also, as I mentioned, the dual power train sets, which is very exciting. If you've ever ridden or heard about the Bright Line down in Florida, these are the exact same train sets that they use down there. They're modern, higher speed, and have the ability to really kind of take advantage of the investments that the Commonwealth is making. And in addition to intercity, we're also greatly expanding VRE service up in Northern Virginia, including weekend service, late night, and then eventually cross-platform, which is essentially a service from Virginia into Maryland and vice versa to really kind of bring the two commuter rail networks, MARC and VRE, into one kind of umbrella eventually. And so phase 3 and beyond, these are the ones we know about that will be come about from these investments after phase 2 gets completed in 2030. 3 additional round trips between Richmond and Norfolk, 4 additional round trips between DC and North Carolina and Charlotte, 2 round trips on the Commonwealth corridor, connecting Richmond, Newport News, Norfolk, all the way through Roanoke and Christiansburg, as well as additional trains on that Roanoke, Christiansburg, Bristol corridor. And we'll also have improved speed, reliability, and travel times with the ultimate goal of getting to a better than car competitive trip between Washington and Richmond. And so to get to the news, and I appreciate everybody sticking through this data laden PowerPoint. The Commonwealth of Virginia got the largest rail grant, the largest federal rail grant we've ever received, well over $749 million to build the Long Bridge, along with a bike pedestrian crossing in the same vicinity. This is actually a series, at least for the rail bridge, of 6 separate bridges that they are building. So it's not just like one bridge across the Potomac. They actually have to build all 6 different bridges to fully connect and fully expand the rail crossing from 2 tracks today to 4 tracks. The state also got $100 million to build the Franconia Springfield flyover. This allows passenger rail trains to kind of switch tracks without having to cross through all lanes. This is a major project to free up a lot of fluidity in the system, improve reliability. Because if you've ever ridden on VRE or Amtrak, and you'll notice that in south of Franconia Springfield, the stations are on one side. North of Franconia Springfield, the stations are on the other. And so as you go up, you'll be going over on one side. And then if you want to start serving the other stations, you actually have to cross all three tracks to get to the other side. So this will help make it a little bit easier and create some fluidity. Virginia and North Carolina also got 1.1 billion to begin building the Raleigh to Richmond corridor. This is primarily for the segment between Raleigh and Wake Forest, fixing up all the rail issues down in North Carolina. As Virginia and North Carolina finished the 30% design on the remainder of the corridor from Wake Forest up to Petersburg. And that's where we got the $58 million engineering grant to finish that design work. The state has also gotten $9.5 million to improve Petersburg, Newport News, and start construction on a new River Valley station. We got $3.2 million to begin improving at-grade crossings along the corridor and going from a single arm that may block traffic to quad arms to help mitigate any issues between the road and the rail and travelers and people not doing smart things around rail lines. And this is one of the Commonwealth corridor is my baby. I've been working on it for well over a decade now. But the state got $500,000 from the federal corridor ID program to add the Commonwealth corridor into the long range plans. And this is a new program that the federal government had created under IIJA to really kind of bring programs into a rail pipeline, which is something that we've never had before. So we're obviously very excited about that and to see East-West service start returning to Virginia in the future. We also got $500,000 to advance the Cardinal Corridor. This is the train that goes from New York down to D.C. through Virginia, through kind of Stanton and Charlottesville, West Virginia, all the way out to Chicago. It only runs 3 times a week. And so this is looking at bringing that up to daily service. We also got $500,000 to advance the Bristol extension for passenger rail service from really the New River Valley down to Bristol. And so this is kind of what it looks like. This is what our rail map looked like before Virginia started investing in passenger rail service. This is what it looked like in 2019 as we started kind of launched the Transforming Rail. This is what it will look like in a few years in 2030. And this is ultimately what we're anticipating it will look like in the 2030 or 2040 timeframe. So a dramatic expansion of service. What that means for Greater Richmond really is by 2030, we will have essentially hourly service during most of the day from Richmond up to DC. That is pretty exciting for allowing us to attract folks, connect to our communities, and just get away from a car. What we've seen is when a community has at least 3 trains, that's where we see ridership explode because it gives folks the options to really kind of get away from the car and know that they have the ability to get back and forth seamlessly, comfortably. And if something happens, they'll have alternatives to return back home or vice versa. And so very exciting things. One request for a call for action. Please visit vhsr.com/action. As you may read in the news, Congress is continuing to fight on actually doing a full appropriation. But what the House is proposing, a 92% cut to Amtrak's Northeast Corridor trains. This would eliminate all of our Amtrak regional service here in Virginia. The very successful trains would be eliminated because of cutting all the funding to the Northeast Corridor service. So please take action. Let your representatives know that you oppose these cuts. Take the train when you get the opportunity, and please, sign up and support Virginians for High-Speed Rail. Learn more about what's going on, and please, participate in our rail and transit, our transit and rail day at the General Assembly. You can find more on vatransit.com. That's our VTA's website. and sign up and learn more about our advocacy day. But Senator Warner will be joining us for the morning briefing before we send everybody over to the General Assembly. So we're very excited about that. And so with that, I will take questions. And that is my now 5-year-old. That's when he was 3, his first train trip between the 2 Richmond stations.
Um,
Can everybody hear me okay?
Siobhan, you're muted.
Sorry, there was something in the way and we couldn't unmute. This is a new computer, so we're trying to still figure it out. Okay, well, thank you very much, Danny. Do you want to go ahead and check the chats? And I think there are some questions.
I saw one comment just about asking folks to mute. That's the only one that I saw.
Okay, Janice has a question. She wants to ask you to share what it was decided for the new track that was finally accepted by the town of Ashland.
As of right now, there is no new track through Ashland. Essentially, it's going to be eventually 4 tracks into Ashland and 4 tracks out. And so we have advised, that community and their leadership to start thinking about, you know, obviously the issue may be taken out of their hands if it becomes a challenge to East Coast rail service. And so hopefully the town of Ashland will make a decision on kind of how they want to see rail expanded through their community, whether it's a 3rd track or underneath. The bypass is all but dead. So it's going to be up to the town of Ashland to decide before I believe somebody else makes that decision.
Okay. She also asked, is any of the funding at risk of loss based on who got elected later this year?
No, most of it is obligated and the state is advancing those projects. And so we don't imagine that any of the announcements will be at risk. But what will be at risk will be a continuation of investments. The IIJA really was the first time that our nation put investments in the rail at a level that would be comparative to roads and some others. And so we would obviously like to very much see those investments continue. I think we're making a lot of progress both here in Virginia and nationally. And so I think that will have an impact, is whether or not those rail programs continue.
Okay, Andrew has a question in the audience here, so I'll let him come over here and ask you.
Good presentation, Danny. When phase 2 is complete by 2030, what is the potential number of passengers per day that can be carried?
That is actually a number that I don't have yet, just because ridership, a lot of it changed during the pandemic, but now that ridership is starting to expand, we have actually not ran the calculations on what the increase in ridership will be. But the fact that we're already exceeding 2.1 million, at least the current projections for this year, I would anticipate it would be a good deal.
Okay, thanks. And another a technical question. I'm presuming the trains are going to be electric.
No. And so until the tracks are completely separated, the agreement that the state made with CSX, which is the freight rail that we purchased the corridor from, precludes electrification unless CSX changes their mind.
Okay.
So they will be dual powered. And the Siemens train says the Aero trains, they're actually testing out electric battery. And so you could imagine a train charging up on the electrified corridor on the Northeast, switching over to battery power here in Virginia, and then operating under battery for our 100+ corridor. And so there's certainly a lot of opportunities to kind of move away from carbon-based fuel. We're also encouraging our freight partners to also move away from carbon. I think if CSX electrifies, that makes it much easier. But they are the roadblock for what's preventing us from electrifying before everything is separated.
Okay, thank you. And I saw a question pop up, or a comment pop up. Siobhan, where can you find the questions? Yeah, I don't know where the chat is. Siobhan, you take.
Bruce and Eileen just booked another Amtrak trip today. Would you comment on fare prices and subsidies and cost in general? All in all, Virginia's trains, while there is a small operating investment, we're moving away from the word subsidy since nobody wants to use that for roadways. It is investment in our community. Our trains previously, before the pandemic, operated in the black. They're very close to kind of returning-ish back to that level. However, one of the things that we've conveyed to the state and kind of the state has taken to heart is we would rather lose a little bit of money and fill the seats than charge everybody $100 a seat, have 10 people on a train and everybody else in a car. And so all in all, if you book a trip out, your Amtrak trip, especially on Virginia's regionals, is very affordable. And they're trying to make sure that it's economically competitive with other modes of transportation as well. Did I answer your question?
I guess we'll find out. Hey, Danny, thanks so much. Great presentation. I had a personal question. Bruce and Eileen say, yes, you did. So thank you. Personal question. As an ex-com member, I'm trying to walk the walk. So I want to take my 7-year-old sister to Florida in a couple weeks, and we've booked a roomette on an Amtrak train heading south. And I wanted to know if you had any tips for traveling for a long extended period of time on an Amtrak train, especially in a roomette. Thanks.
Yeah. My biggest recommendation would be one of the challenges with all Amtrak trains is their Wi-Fi operates over cell towers. And more frequently, they do not place cell towers kind of along the tracks. At least the major carriers don't. So kind of identify, if you can, where the major spots are, just to accommodate any downloads or any other major data usage. They are working on transitioning to a more satellite-based communication system, and they're hoping to implement that Amtrak nationwide over the coming years. But right now, their system operates over cell towers. That's why if you've ever taken the train DC North, you may lose a little bit of reception outside Ashland before you get to Fredericksburg when you go through the more rural areas, just because there's not a lot of proximity to cellular towers.
Hello, Danny. I have a question. You mentioned a little bit about the nationwide things, but I'm curious. This is what you're describing is very exciting for the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. How does the rest of the country compare? Or any other parts of the country getting anything nearly this exciting?
Obviously, North Carolina is making a lot of investments down there. The Northeast Corridor has received several billion to begin improving, fixing a lot of bridges in Baltimore and New York, and that will ultimately improve our service as well. California has gotten a tremendous amount of resources. They are the only state that's really kind of doing a true high-speed rail system, and they're doing it more or less from scratch. So while they've run into challenges, it is very exciting to kind of see what they're doing, and they're also looking at extending service. I believe it's from LA to Las Vegas, and then the Northwest is kind of our peer, and they're doing a lot of investments up there to kind of start expanding their passenger rail, and they're the ones who are test piloting the electrified slash battery version of the Siemens Aero train. So there's a lot of investments that have gone out. Virginia has certainly got our fair share, and we're going continue to pursue every grant so that we can add more projects to the state's pipeline.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let's see. Any other questions in the chat here? Let's see. I think that's it. Oh, wait. Yeah, you answered that. Okay, well, thank you so much, Danny. Anybody else have any more questions for Danny? Okay, well, I really appreciate it, and thank you so much. You get a $50 honorarium, and you've asked to have it donated to the Virginians for high-speed rail. So, my husband Andrew is the treasurer, and he'll be sending that to you tomorrow.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Locations for
The check is written, and it'll be in the mail tomorrow. So, thank you so much, Danny. We really appreciate it, and keep up the good work.
Like I said, thank you all. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, well, I think we just want to do a few announcements now. Let me just share my screen. And let's see. I think, Danny, yours is still sharing. Let's see. Let me see if it'll. Okay, here it is. Okay, stop share. Okay, let me go to mine.
Shrink Zoom.
What? Shrink the Zoom. Hold on.
Yeah, you're sharing it. Shrink the Zoom.
No, it shouldn't. Sorry, I'm still looking for my program.
You're sharing your screen on ours.
I'm sharing it? Okay, thank you. All right. Sorry, I'm still looking for my program presentation. Oh, here it is. Okay, can you see it now? Okay, Joe, you want to scroll and talk about the announcements? All you have to do is scroll like that.
All right. We have not as many announcements as usual, but some exciting things coming up. On January 15th, which is, of course, Martin Luther King Day, there is a tree planting, which is being done by Southside Relief, a wonderful organization here in Richmond. As you can see, it's from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. In the Swansboro West area, and you meet at the corner of 31st Street and McRand Street. Tree planting in January. On January 18th, as mentioned before, the Sierra Club Virginia chapter is having its very first own standalone lobby day. And that will actually be held out of 701 East Franklin Street, the building where Virginia Conservation Network is. And if you register, you will get all the details like that. And this is an unusual lobby day that is free of charge. So if you're ever wondering, is there any such thing as a free lunch? There is on January 18th, if you come downtown and talk to your representatives. We have some hikes coming up. January 20th in Forest Hill Park, 9:30 to 11:30 a.m. Look at that lovely picture. Some rock hopping to be done. And then in February, on February 24th, Cumberland Marsh Hike in New Kent County with one of, I believe, our very newest outings leader, Doug Kuvillian. And so if you can, please join us for that one. We hope to see bald eagles, ospreys, great blue herons, and similar. Then next month, our program, which hopefully will take place under better weather conditions and will once again be here at Congregation Orami and on Zoom, is our speakers are two people from VCU. And what this title means, in a nutshell, is we're talking about manufacturing and what can be done so that companies, once they manufacture something, they don't just send this stuff out into the world and never touch it again, never see it again, and its disposal of it is our problem, or reuse or recycling of it is the public's problem. We want manufacturers to design things for a circular lifespan. That's the circular revolution that we're talking about, and you can learn more about it on February 9th. So please join us then. And no, February 13th, sorry. Down here. Here's the correct date. It's there. It's there. I'm messing up. February 13th, 2024. That's when you should join us. Manufacturing and the Circular Revolution. That's it for now. I want to thank you all for joining us on Zoom or these massive crowds that I'm trying to hold back in the room here. It's incredible. It is truly incredible. You all are very wonderful, and we hope we can see you in February and at these other earlier events. Tree planting on Martin Luther King Day. Thanks very much. Good night.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, everybody. And you'll have a good evening and stay safe. And hopefully this rain will calm down a little bit here.
Hope so. Thank you. Good night.
Okay. Thank you all. Good night.